As part of our educational role, we usually design and deliver teaching and learning activities in different courses. And we know how complex this task can be. But how do we know the real merit or worth of these activities? How can we quality assure them? This is precisely the topic of this video, where we will be discussing what program evaluation is, why, and how to conduct it. Hello everyone and welcome. In this video, we will be discussing the reasons behind program evaluation. First of all, we will understand a program as something as small as an individual class session, a course, or a placement rotation, or it may be as large as the whole of an educational program. The main focus of this is to evaluate if a program works as intended and if there are any unintended consequences. Now, Arlene Fink, an expert on this topic from the University of California, provides us with an accurate definition of program evaluation in the health professions. She defines it as the diligent investigation of a program's characteristics and merits, with the purpose of providing information about its effectiveness, so as to optimize the outcomes, efficiency, and quality of healthcare. An evaluation, then, may analyze a program's structure, activities and organizations, as well as its social environment and general context. We therefore understand this process as the systematic collection and analysis of information related to the design, implementation, and outcomes of a program with the purpose of monitoring and improving the quality and effectiveness of the program, but also to identify internal or external sources of these outcomes. Do also remember that evaluating your own practice is an important part of the leadership in your educational role. It is important to clarify then that the evaluation of the effectiveness of a program is not a synonym of the assessment of students' learning. Though students' learning may be a part of it, an evaluation does not exclusively focus on students' academic performance. It involves much more than this and deals with aspects such as quality assurance and if the planned aims or objectives were met. Why then should we bother and evaluate our programs? When we design and deliver our learning activities, we invest lots of time in its planification and organization. But do we know if the activity was any good? How can we find this out? How can we do a proper evaluation? How can we know if the planned change was successful, or if there is a justification for the human and financial resources that we have invested? In fact, it might be the case that we think that everything has gone perfectly, when it might not be like that. Let me illustrate this point with an example from Dr. Sheldon Cooper from the Big Bang Theory.
Good evening. I'm your guest lecturer, Dr. Sheldon Cooper.
I found another tweet from a student at Sheldon's lecture. Dr. Cooper has taken a relatively boring subject and managed to make it completely insufferable.
Listen to this one. Does Einstein's theory explain why time flies when you're having fun, but when you're listening to Dr. Cooper, it falls out of the sky dead?
What are you guys doing?
Sheldon gave a lecture at the university tonight. We're reading the reviews.
Oh, how'd he do?
Read this woman's tweet.
Well, good evening, Leonard, Howard, Raj, freeloader. So, how'd the lecture go? In a word, triumphant.
Really? Triumphant?
Oh, yes. You should have seen those young people. They're thirsty for knowledge, drinking in my wisdom. I may have changed a few lives today.
Oh, please let me tell him.
Raj, if you would. Oh, tweets about my lecture. That's rather unfair. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the acronym KMN.
From the context, we think it means kill me now.
Well, suppose everyone's entitled to their own opinion. I think I'll turn in. I want to teach those poopy heads anyway.
Well, this is quite an exaggerated example, but the main point is that Sheldon never considered doing an evaluation of his program, and his perception was quite different from that of the learners. So we have external and internal reasons why to conduct program evaluations. Amongst the external reasons, we mainly find accountability with regards to the requirements of accreditation processes and quality assurance. We might also do this in the process to secure funding for educational innovations or to continue with certain aspect of our program, but also to report back to our school or faculty. The internal reasons, on the other hand, are much more related to an internal quality control of what we do, of wanting to know how our programs work, and that this is then useful to maintain certain activities, work on improvements, or implement changes. A strong program evaluation process supports accountability while allowing educators to gain useful knowledge about their program and sustain ongoing program development. And it is much broader than merely handing out satisfaction surveys to learners at the end of sessions. In general, there are 7 steps in program evaluation that we should always consider. In the planning phase, the first step is to define the questions and aims of the evaluation. What do we want to evaluate and why? Another important aspect here is to think who will read our evaluation report at the end. Whose opinion is that matters? Who will use our evaluation? And what will be important to them? It might be different if it's only for internal use or if it's for an external peer review panel, for instance. So all these questions take into consideration the particular context in which your program takes place. The second step is to set a standard for our aims or questions. Towards which effectivity standard are we going to compare with? This may be set by your team based on your own experience, or it may consider the results of other similar programs. The third step is to design the evaluation. How will we do it? What methods and instruments will we use? When will we do it? You should also consider whether you need a summative evaluation at the end of the program, a formative evaluation that runs at various points along the program, such as mid-module evaluations, or both summative and formative. One good aspect of formative evaluations is that learners might get the chance of experiencing the changes made in response to their views. Step number 4 is to select the involved participants for our evaluation. Will we need to evaluate all participants, a sample, specific cases, typical or atypical cases? Now the fifth step is to actually collect the data and organize it. So step number 6 is to analyze and interpret this collected data. So to finally, in step 7, we may be able to report our evaluation and disseminate or circulate it amongst the intended audience. So by all these steps, it should be clear by now that we need to start thinking about evaluation from the start of our programs and not leave this until the program finishes. Defining the questions and setting the standard is something that is particular and contextual to your program. However, the design and methods are something that can be more transferable and applicable to different evaluations. There are different models that are underpinned by different theories and follow different paradigms. In this video, we will focus in one of the most popular models, the Kirkpatrick 4-level model. In 1967, Donald Kirkpatrick postulated a series of levels to assess impact and evaluate programs. Initially, this was intended for business programs, but considering its popularity and transference, it has been used by many other areas and disciplines, including health professionals education. This outcome-based model describes a hierarchy that goes from the lowest to the highest levels of impact and credibility about the effectiveness and value of an activity. As I am sure you already know, this has been commonly shown as a pyramid. At the base of the pyramid, we find the first level, which is what we commonly do to evaluate programs, to seek learners' reaction or satisfaction to the program. This includes questions about user satisfaction with regards to contents and materials, the venue, the presentation, and instructors, amongst others. The second level evaluates the learning attributed to the program. Have students learned anything from the program? And this can be regarding knowledge, skills, or attitudes. Here the evaluation methods and instruments usually involve questionnaires, written or workplace assessments, or interviews with regards to the learning outcomes. Now, the third level evaluates behavior change in learners in the context of the training. Has there been a behavior change? Are participants using and transferring what they have learned to their current practice or their workplace? Are they applying what they have learned? Here, direct or indirect observation and reflection are really useful methods. The fourth level corresponds to the evaluation of results and how the training has had an impact or how it has been transferred to the institution or organization, its impact on society or other individuals, improvements in patient outcomes, or in their experience or treatments, or if it has had a positive impact in the following courses in the curriculum. At this point, it is important to clarify that these levels not necessarily need to be evaluated in a sequential way, and that not all programs require evaluation at all four levels. So the entire hierarchy might not be applicable to every single program, and it is also important to consider that this model can be mixed with others in order to evaluate process, for instance, and have a more comprehensive evaluation. So, which levels are you considering in your evaluations, and which methods are you planning to use? A useful advice might be to start by defining then your aims and setting your standard, and not force yourselves to always measure the four levels of the pyramid. You should be much better off if you first select the proper evaluation levels or models that align with your objectives, then select the method, then the instruments, and finally the modality, be it face-to-face or online. To properly evaluate these different levels, it is important to select appropriate methods and instruments. Just to mention a few, among this, we have questionnaires first, that might come as closed or open-ended questions, and where we might collect valuable information, for instance, from learners, from colleagues that can peer review our program, from external experts that can provide feedback, self-evaluation, or the view of learners that have recently finished our program and have moved on to the following courses, or alumni. All of this depends on what we want to evaluate and which people we want to involve. We also have interviews and focus groups to obtain qualitative data and where we might also involve learners or other key informants. Now, observation, direct or indirect, through recordings for instance, is a really important method, especially in level 3 when we need to observe changes in behavior. And we also have the results of students' assessments throughout the program, formative or summatives, written or workplace-based assessments that might also be a proper input, especially with regards to level 2. These are some of the methods and instruments by which we can evaluate our programs, but the options are not limited to this, and you can choose from a wide variety of instruments out there that suit your particular needs. In this video then, we have discussed what evaluation is and some general points on why and how to evaluate. Educators that design, implement, and evaluate learning activities, you, perfectly know that this can be a real challenge, and the final recommendation is to invest energy up front and save yourself the headache and frustration that comes when a poorly planned evaluation fails to provide the information required to satisfy the audience and facilitate necessary decision.